Those of you who've been listening for a while will know that I live in Istanbul. Now, it might surprise you to know that we have fully fledged, freezing cold winters here. It's not all sunshine and fun, you know. Yep, in fact, we even had our first snow of the year just this week. And those of you who've been around for a while will also know that from time to time, I like to invite you all around the campfire to tell some stories in front of the crackling flames. Now, on a freezing cold night like this, it feels just the perfect occasion to do so. So, come on in everyone, snuggle up close, the fire's nice and warm, and I've got a few stories to tell you. And they go something like this. No, I'm not crazy. The reason I'm telling you this first is because some of the things I'm about to tell you, you're not going to believe. First, I see ghosts. Real ghosts. They look like you and me sometimes. They're paper white. Well, sometimes they're a baby blue color. There are even the misty black ones, and those I try to steer clear of. They are bad news. To those of you who have seen ghosts, good for you. Well, unless one of the ghosts you know used to be a child napper. That was my first one. The weeping woman, La Llorona. Don't ask how I survived, because honestly, as a kid, well, you're told when bad things happen to blink 3 times and they will just go away. That's what I did, and amazingly, it worked. After that, there were a lot of the black shadows and a few blue ones. One of them happened to be a little boy, no more than 5 or 6 years old. Sometimes I wonder how he died, but unfortunately, I can't talk to them. I mean, they're dead. What do you expect? I'm no ghost whisperer. Anyway, I'm getting off topic now. Number 2. Mannequins are alive. Not in the traditional sense of, well, breathing, but more like robots or automatons. I completely believe one day, when their numbers are high enough, or they collect a hive mind, they will kill all of mankind. I've personally been attacked by these things on a few occasions. Maybe not all of them have some form of consciousness, but the vast majority of them are able to attack small groups of people. Those people who disappear in the malls, that is their doing. Number 3. This one really takes the cake. Stuffed animals can influence you into killing people. Now, I don't know if mine was just possessed by an evil spirit or what, but when he told me to kill people in my elementary school just because I had a bad day, well, let's just say I didn't sleep with that animal for a while. No, I won't tell you which one it was. Don't want to ruin any of your childhoods. Also, before you ask, no, I'm not a murderer. Just because I experienced it doesn't mean I actually killed anyone. So, like I said, I'm not crazy. I have stories to back up most of my beliefs and rational fears. Now that I'm here typing all this up, I'm not even sure where to start. Maybe one of my childhood stories. Yes, that's as good a place as any to tell you out how this all came to be. How I ended up being cursed by some sort of demon. Well, probably. I was about 10 years old. And no, I wasn't a horror movie buff at the time. I am now, but that's because I've become desensitized to it. 5th grade year for me was when it all started. When I started getting strep every other week. Sorry, I can't tell you where I used to live. I don't want anyone to recognize me. So, for this reason, I'm going to change the name of the teachers I had those years, as well as the name of my best and only friend. So, 5th grade year, my sisters and I decided to have a camp out in our room. The youngest of my sisters slept in the bunk bed. while myself and my other young sister set up blankets around the nightlight. Best a few kids could do, living in the mountains, where you had to worry about bears and mountain lions getting into your yard. Now, this was the night I met her, La Llorona. My father claims it was just a dream. What are they called? Night terrors. I'm not sure what possessed me to wake up at the witching hour. For those of you who don't know, that's the time where the spirits are closest to this realm. For me, this time was around midnight, about 9 minutes from when I'm writing this now. When I opened my eyes, I couldn't move. A ghostly arm leading to a hand covering my mouth, and the other end led to her. Her hair flowing like she was lying in water. That scar over her right eye, if I remember correctly. I could only stare at her, watch her as she held up a finger to her lips. I tried to scream, hoping to wake anyone in the house, only to find I couldn't do that either. Now, when presented with these details, what would you have done? I was still an innocent kid. Well, aside from my stuffed animal asking me to kill the other kids a few years prior. I did the only thing that would have made sense to my childlike mind. I decided to blink 3 times. I honestly didn't believe it would work. But, well, it was better than just lying there not knowing what was going to happen next. Luckily for me, it worked, and I got up, running into my grandparents' room. I spent the remainder of the night with them. Now, if memory serves, my computer teacher, a crazy woman who always called me a troublemaker, even though we both knew better, well, I'll call her Josephine. Well, she occasionally read stories to the classes. About a week after that incident, she told us the story of La Llorona, and that's how I knew who she was. Now you can understand why I am how I am, why I believe what I do. Knowing this, would you believe me if I told you that this isn't where it ends? After that visit from the terrestrial plane of existence, I turned to horror. I started watching Goosebumps, or The Haunting by R.L. Stine. He was where I learned about the darker parts of the horror community. Watching a few of Stephen King's works later in my life, I then started watching The Ring, The Grudge, and a few others. A few years ago, I started getting into creepypasta. Laughing Jack, Jeff the Killer, Slender Man, just to name a few. You all know what I mean. You're part of the community as well, after all. So, when I tell you what happened after I moved to where I am now, well, let's just say I warned you. Now, I don't work there any longer. I've moved on and been working this new job for a week or so. It's quiet for now, but I don't think it's over. I used to work at a gas station. Now, I know it's overused and overdone, and yet for me, this is where it all began. The dark shadows that are following me are coming from that store. I met that little boy at that store, and I think he might be hunted by the dark shadow as well. Learning to work with those black shadows, hiding behind every shelf, was difficult. Even seeing them stand not 3 feet away from a few of my customers, how they didn't see them I will never know. Some days I see just one, other days I see 5 or 6. About the time I started seeing more of them is when I became aware that they were after me. No. I don't know what I did to get their attention. Maybe it's because, well, I know that they exist. Seeing the tall, shadow-like figures every 10 minutes when I wasn't blocking them out. Now, I'm starting to wonder if there's a way to see what they want from me. I've been thinking about getting one of those spirit boards and going off into the woods so that they're not in my house. I'm not stupid enough to get spirits trapped in my house, but it's not like I haven't tried to get their attention. I've tried that Charlie game and a few others, No results as far as that goes, sadly. I also haven't tried talking to them directly. Don't need to be talking to what looks like air to everyone else. Well, not in public. Should they stick around long enough to answer yes or no questions in my home, instead of disappearing before I can turn to face them, then I would happily do that. Though that would need to wait until I have salt, so I can do those salt circles to prevent evil from taking over my body. I don't think that works as well in practice as it would in theory, though. I know they are watching me as I type all of this up, so I need to give all of you a warning about the shadow people. Shadow ghosts? Well, if you see them, just act like you don't. You can't get rid of them once you've let them know you can see them as well. I'm going to do some research into ways to communicate with them for now. I'll get back to you if I find anything out, or if something else happens with other supernatural beings that I know about. For now, I'm going to have to sign off. Hopefully it won't take too long to get some much needed answers. So, shadow ghosts, the theme of our first story there. Now, is everybody warm enough? Come on, we're all friends here. Snuggle up a bit closer to the fire? That's right. Okay, ready for another one? Alright, the theme of this story is things that go bump in the night. I am the thing that goes bump in the night. I spent my first few centuries in seclusion. Sure, being worshipped as a god was fun for a while, but those petty mortals have no idea what it's like to live forever. I've had at least 10 generations come and go, while I keep living. The torture of getting married and watching your partner wither and grow old, while you live in eternal youth, unaffected by disease, unable to simply end it all. Oh, it's enough to drive a person mad. I was there during the Black Plague as well. They had me dispose of those that had fallen to this brutally painful disease. I did catch the plague once or twice, and it was agony. But, alas, it could not kill me, so I was to live with the pain of my body trying to rid itself of this putrid infliction. Then there was the London fire. I was there for that as well. I don't know what happened with that, though. I just snapped. I'd had enough of the pious morons worshipping the very ground I walk on, so they just had to be cleansed. As the years dragged on, I stopped living and simply endured my existence. I grew shallow and cold, hardened like stone by my lifetime of enduring mental and physical pain without being able to escape. It's really too much to deal with, and now the only way I can really entertain myself is by traveling to different locations, making up some sort of bizarre urban legend, and then making it come true. Nothing pleases me more now than inflicting upon others the same agonizing torment that I've had to endure for years. So, let this be a warning to those of you who wonder what it would be like to be immortal. It is a sad, dark, and lonely existence, and it's just not worth it. Furthermore, if you should happen upon some local urban legends, it could well be that I'm not far from your home. In fact, I could very well be in your home, waiting to snatch you from the darkness. Out of everything I've spoken of, however, there is one thing that you can most definitely be certain of. I am the thing that goes bump in the night. Well, that one was short, but not particularly sweet. as is the next story I've got lined up for you this evening. How are you all doing? Anybody need some hot cocoa? A beer? Nice cold beer around the fire? Okay, here you go. Alright. Everyone settled in? Right. Next story is about things we find under our pillow. I'm about to tell you my situation. And I'm going to have to ask you one thing. To believe me. Please. I know I'm not crazy. And I don't have any mental health issues. I'm a typical, normal guy, going through something he doesn't quite understand. I need your help understanding it. Sometimes at night, I swear, I hear people talking. As soon as I put my ear to my pillow, it's like a whole group of people are chatting from within it. I'm not sure what most of them are saying. It just comes off as gibberish or nonsense to me. Sometimes I think I even hear scathing laughter amidst all the crazy banter within. I'm not sure what's going on, but I'm beginning to get a little nervous. I haven't tried breaking into the conversations at all. I wouldn't know what to say, as I'm not even sure what they're really talking about. It's almost like hearing a room full of people downstairs, coming through an open vent. It's not, though. I check my ceiling vent as well as the one under my bed, and there's no sound coming from there at all. Complete silence, well, outside of my pillows. Last night, things changed a little bit. You see, this has only been happening for a couple of weeks. However, things have already seemingly taken a turn in a mysterious direction. I just changed into some shorts and a tank top for bed, and hopped under the covers for the night when I started hearing a voice, quite different from the ones from the previous nights. Hey you, come to bed. The very strange, whispery voice emanated from the direction of my headboard. It sounded hushed, but discernible enough to make out words among the short, round breaths. I stopped, not quite sure if I'd imagined the voice or not. Who's there? I asked, backing up toward my bedroom door. Come to bed. Come to bed and put your ear to your pillow. My heart was pounding, confused about what was transpiring. I walked slowly toward my bed and put one leg up on my mattress. I waited a moment to see if I heard the voice again. I was scared, but skeptical. I decided to just do as the voice demanded of me anyway. I laid down and put my ear to my pillow and waited to hear what it had to say. Dream well tonight, please, the voice said. What the? I shouted and lifted my head and body up from the bed. I was arched on all fours, staring at my pillowcase. This couldn't be real. No way. Somehow, I found the courage to sleep in my bed last night. All I could hear was the usual gibberish, jumbled voices talking after that. I tried swapping my top and bottom pillows around to see if anything changed. I was greeted by the same muffled chit-chat, though. Has anyone else experienced this? Am I in danger? I don't know if I should just try sleeping on my couch or on the floor with a backpack under my head instead tonight. I do know that I had, well, wonderful dreams last night. Maybe I should sleep in my own bed again and try talking more with the voice that beckoned me to lie down. Everyone keeping warm enough? I hope so. Well, let's stick a few more logs of wood on the fire just to keep it going. A couple more stories to go after all. The next one up, the importance of listening to your grandmother. My grandmother had always been a superstitious person. She was ancient and was always going on about some urban legend or certain things you were not to do in a specific manner.
We would speak of things like skinwalkers, haunting spirits, or hook-handed hitchhikers. But of course, I never believed her. And now, well, I really wish I had heeded her words. It was making out to be a dark but clear evening. There wasn't a cloud or star to be seen, and it nearly sent shivers down my spine. My family had all gathered at my mother's house for the holidays. While a few decided to leave, I was stuck, staying here. My gaze led me across the room to my great-grandmother Myrtle, who seemed to be dozing in her chair. Checking my watch, I realized it was later than I thought, and I decided to go up to bed. I crossed the room and gently placed a large knit blanket over Grandma. As I turned away, I nearly jumped out of my skin as a bony hand clamped down on my forearm. I turned to face her, and she looked wide awake now. I looked at her expectantly, waiting for her to say something to break the chilling silence. Her eyes widened, and she seemed to be looking right through me, into my very soul. "Don't you know, you're never to look out a window when the moon is full and the clock strikes 12, she said, barely loosening her grip on my arm. Well, I didn't know what else to do, so I weakly nodded my head and gently pried myself from her deathly grasp. I made my way up the creaky stairs and soon snuggled myself into the guest bed. I lay there, awake, thinking about the chilling words of my grandmother. Well, my curiosity was starting to consume me, so I decided that one little peek out of the window couldn't hurt. I checked my watch as I sat up to look out of the window. It read 11:59 p.m. as I drew the curtains back as quietly as I could. I waited until the clock struck 12, and I concentrated my gaze on everything outside of the window. I waited for what seemed like hours, expecting some sort of boogeyman to pop up out of the bushes. After seeing nothing, I shook my head and buried myself back into bed. I hadn't even closed my eyes for 10 seconds when I heard it. It sounded like someone was flinging small pebbles at my window. I rolled over, thinking it was some idiot teenagers trying to play some sort of joke. But the small pebble-like sounds began to escalate into a furious pounding on my window. "Oh, bastards," I muttered, as I found myself climbing out from under the covers and making my way back to the window. I angrily drew the curtains back, expecting to see some stupid kid. My blood froze, when what met me on the other side was not some reckless teenager. It was tall, taller than any sort of person I'd ever seen in my life. Its skin was the same shade of copy paper, and was stretched tightly over its bony, emaciated frame. Dirty, matted hair lay in patches on its skull, and it was wearing a filthy, tattered dress that hung loosely over its sickly body. But the worst part were its eyes, or what was left of them anyway. Deep, soulless black sockets that seemed to go on forever. Despite its lack of eyes, I knew that it was staring right at me. If you've ever read the scary stories to tell in the dark book as a child, you may remember the nightmare-inducing illustrations. I felt like I was looking at a creature from a page in that book. Resorting to childhood behavior, I jumped back into bed and pulled the covers over my head, hoping I'd just imagined it and it would all go away. But I began to realize my worst fears as I heard the sound of the front door forcefully open. And here I am, writing this. I managed to wriggle myself under the bed and wait for my death. I can hear it stepping around the house, looking for me. Its steps are slow, but I know it will find me eventually. My message to you is, if you have a grandmother anything like mine, or some person like that in your area, then listen to them. No matter how crazy they seem, they know. They know that you shouldn't make the mistake of looking out the window at midnight during a full moon. Take this warning. No matter how curious you are, do not take the risk. I know it's coming for me. In fact, the bedroom door just creaked open. Should always listen to your grandparents. Mark my words. Well, our evening together is almost coming to an end, but not before one more story. This time, the importance of not always trusting what you see on the evening news. My work friends and I were at our favourite pub last night. Not really a fancy place, but, you know, cheap beer and close enough to home that I don't have to drive. The night started out normally enough. The four of us crammed into a small table off in the corner, mostly talking shop and shitting on our boss. Being this was the middle of the week, there weren't too many other people around, maybe around 8 or 9 others in the whole place. Everybody just kind of keeping to themselves. You know, the sort of people you'd expect to see in a pub on a Wednesday. Anyway, from where I'm sitting, I have a pretty good view of the TV behind the bar. Jesse, the bartender, is kind of lazily flipping through channels and passes by our local news channel. There's a brief burst of orange and red on the screen, which I register as a fire happening somewhere, which then disappears as Jesse switches over to the next channel. Something about the image looks oddly familiar, though. "Hey, Jess, can you switch that back?" I call out to her. The news comes back on, and suddenly I recognize the building in the frame. It's my building, and it's burning. "Holy shit," I say, loudly enough that a few people follow my gaze to the television. "That's my apartment." The crowd in the bar falls kind of quiet. Everybody's staring up at the screen now. The screen shows a wide shot of the outside of my building. The camera must be set up on the north end of the block because I recognize a lot of shops on the ground floor. Property management, dry cleaner, convenience mart, and so on. The top left corner of the building is aflame. It's not a huge fire by any means, but it looks like a few units between the top 4 floors or so have already been engulfed by the flames. "Jesus, man," one of my co-workers says. That sucks." There's an uncomfortable murmur of agreement that passes around the table. I mean, I don't blame them. I wouldn't know what to say in this situation either. Yep, I agree, just as awkwardly. Thankfully, my apartment is only about halfway up and located on the west side of the building. I cross my fingers, hoping my stuff will be okay. The camera cuts to a reporter on the scene. He's standing a little further away. Looking at the shops in the background, I can tell he's across the street on the northwest corner of the building. "Firefighters are expected on the scene at any moment," he's saying, "and hopefully they'll be able to contain this horrible inferno before it spreads any further. As I was saying before, it's very fortunate that everyone was able to evacuate the building before things got too bad, or who knows what tragic events may have unfolded." "He's laying it on thick," my other co-workers joke. I chuckle a bit. All things considered, at the moment, it didn't really seem all that bad. But then, a few moments later, hang on, the reporter on TV says. "We're getting some updated information. It seems... hang on one moment, while we readjust the camera." The previously locked down camera starts to shift, the angle focusing on an area of the building about halfway up to the west side. All the lights in the building are out except one. I feel a weird, creeping sensation as I start counting the windows from the bottom. 5 up, 2 over. That's my place. I swore I turned that light out, I think at first. And then I see it. There's a person standing in my window. The camera is zoomed out too far to make out any features, but it definitely looks like a man, and it's definitely standing in my apartment. I watch, petrified, as the camera zooms in closer. The reporter babbling on about the overlooked, ill-fated soul still trapped in the blazing... As the image gets closer, I start to make out more details. The person is dancing or something. I don't really know how to describe it, but he's moving around a lot, and everything he's doing has this bizarre rhythmic quality to it. He starts waving his arms in the air, back and forth, and then he's waving them up and down at his sides. Then he's banging both fists on the glass. Then he's waving his arms over his head again, back and forth. Everything he's doing is to the exact same tempo. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. He starts jumping up and down, waving his arms over his head like he's trying to get someone's attention from a long distance. But everything is to the exact same rhythm, over and over again. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. What in the I say, my voice a hoarse whisper. And then the camera gets a little closer, and finally we can make out the person's features. It looks almost exactly like me. It's wearing the same exact clothes that I'm wearing now. Clothes I changed into moments before leaving the apartment earlier. Its face looks almost exactly like mine as well, except for its eyes. Its eyes are far too big for a normal person. It also has this almost comical look of horror on its face. I don't even know how to describe it. Imagine if someone were pretending to look scared, but as a joke. It would have almost seemed funny if the circumstances were different, but instead, it was just extremely unnerving. No one in the bar is talking now. Everyone is fixed on the TV. The person is still swaying and waving around, beating its hands on the glass or jumping in circles. I almost don't hear the reporter mention the fact that firefighters have rushed into the building and are now heading for my floor. Oh, God, I think, without really understanding what was happening. Please, don't go in there. I stare, transfixed at the screen. From this angle, you can just barely see the top of my front door through the window, not too far behind where this creature is flailing around. Right now, it's holding its face in its hands and shaking its head from side to side, as if saying, no. Suddenly, the door behind it bursts open, as, presumably, the firefighters have entered my apartment. The creature stops moving. For a second, I see its expression change. The comical look of horror is gone, replaced by a huge smile filled with enormous, pointed teeth. Then, the lights go out. We all just sat there, staring at the screen as the camera slowly zoomed out from the now dark window. No one says anything, as we all quietly pay our bill and leave. I went directly to my sister's place across town and asked to stay with her. I told her there was a fire at my apartment and, well, that's it. When I tried to find footage from the news online later that night, it seemed like they'd edited that last part out. Oh, I don't know if any of you know what that thing was, but I hope they didn't put out that fire. I hope they just let the whole fucking place burn to the ground.
So there you go, 5 tales for you this evening. Hope you enjoyed your time around the campfire with me. We'll have to do this again sometime very soon. This is the weather for it, isn't it? Well, that's enough for me for one evening. Hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. I, of course, will be back with you on Wednesday, when I finally plan to get back to the breach stories. Part 4 coming up, I promise. Well, kind of promise. Whatever happens, I will have something for you on Wednesday. Till then, sweet dreams and bye-bye.
Thank you so much for choosing to spend your time listening to me. Now, if you enjoyed the Dr. Creepin experience, then come find me on Facebook. Come chat with me on Twitter. Listen to the background music and download it if you like on SoundCloud. Drop by the store, pick up a t-shirt. And, importantly, if you've got a story you'd like me to read, send it to Dr. Creepin's Vault, the subreddit I set up so that I could read your stories. Now, looking forward to seeing you all again real soon. So, come check me out, okay?